Yeah, welcome to our presentation, to our workshop regarding ProHeritage. ProHeritage is a project related to traditional crafts which have an impact on energy efficiency. The first part of this workshop is related to cultural heritage and its climate protection function. And I will talk a little bit about some, I would call it misunderstandings regarding the climate function of historic buildings. But I will start with a small introduction of ProHeritage. What was the motivation? We all in the consortium are requested to keep our cultural heritage in shape. So I think more than half of the consortium's member are running or involved in maintenance work for cultural heritage sites. And we have to keep them in shape and available for future generation. We also have to accept, not only to accept, we are willing to understand that historic sites could not only be reserved or conservated in the way they was in the past. So we need to adapt them to the current and future generation requirements, but it should be in a call it compatible way with the historic building. So traditional buildings do have an enormous added value. So if we invest €1 in the maintenance of an historic building, we get a money added value back from around more than €6. So I think it's definitely worth to think about that, and the Commission is also aware of that, and maybe that was also a reason for granting our project here. For the traditional buildings, we need traditional crafts because without them, we could not keep them in shape, because there was, I will call the historic buildings also smart buildings, because we had some intelligence in the building we didn't remember anymore. So for instance, we have a natural ventilation, which is perfectly working if you don't interfere with an artificial one, of course. And it's also potential benefits for the COVID-19 situation, because it transported also the virus out of the building. So there's more intelligence in the building as you usually assume here. Hoppala, das war zu lang. They do have a positive impact on the climate protection. This will be the core of this presentation, and it's part of the circular economy, even that some of the specialists in circular economy are not convinced about that, but we are convinced, and we have to tell that as well. And each traditional building is different. So when you have one building and you did something there, you have to think again when you see a new building, because the situation, the significance, the values which are related to the building, even the traditional products, materials are maybe different. So you have to start to think again when you have a new building. What was our research question because ProHeritage is part of the Horizon 2020 framework program? We have to define what is the appropriate energy efficiency measures not only for each of the consortium's members. So we have to find a common understanding within them, and also to put that on a European level as well. And which crafts do need an upskill? So where we have a real problem, because some of the crafts are already dying out or already at risk, already died out. So we have to think about how we can recover that, and what learning outcomes have to be covered in the trainings we will develop. So one of the major results will be the energy expert for cultural heritage from our project. What are the objectives of our project? We have to protect traditional competence and skills for cultural heritage. We need to involve adequately educated and trained professionals and craftsmen, because if they don't know what they are doing, they will definitely produce a damage on the building. We need to keep these professionals, craftsmen, updated, because of course we're also thinking about modern material and modern technologies, but it's not the first step. It's always if there is no other possibility, but we have to know what's going on. And we need to certify these professionals and craftsmen, because often they are not having the chance to say, look, I am professional and I certified of that what I'm doing. And at the end of the project, everyone who make the training and pass the exam, of course, they will get a certificate where we tell that they know what they have to do. They know their approaches. They know what they have to do, and they are able to explain it to their customers or owners of historic building. Yeah, and of course it need to be updated as well. That's the full function of the job role, but this will be the third part of this workshop. And it's, as I already said, it's funded by the Horizon 2020 project for a framework program. Yeah,
why do we need Gerald, why do we need the European dimension actually? Let me ask this question. Because it's a EU-funded project.
Yeah, because you always do something in your own, let me call in your own, was heißt Teich, in your own sea, smaller. Yeah, and then you need to understand that there is more, because of course there is a dimension you can do it in a local way, but as we said, we are losing some skills in some regions, and other regions we still have it. Even that is a point for a European approach, because we have then to close this arbitrage between the regions in Europe, to say here there are professionals, craftsmen, they know what they do still for the historic buildings. They know their traditional crafts, and they can maybe work in entire Europe, because we have some areas where we do not have anymore. And other parts of Europe we do have, and we don't know them, and we would need them. So that's of course, one point for the European dimension. And of course, we cannot develop a trainings program to say that will be our standard if we don't do it on a European level, because then we do it, maybe by each of the owner of a historic building. But that could not be the point, because we have to share their knowledge as well between all these involved stakeholders. Okay, I will go to the basic rules regarding intervention. What is important if you do an intervention? First of all, stay in the system as long as possible. That means when you have a specific material, then don't replace it just by fun with another one, because you get problems you might not know from these aspects. The second one is you should always think about, do not worsen the initial situation for the next intervention. So when you do an intervention, you should think on the next intervention will happen right after this, because then you know that the next one behind you is able to do it in the same way. If you don't think on that, you maybe lose the chance to keep that building in a proper shape. Life cycle, as I already said, is part of the traditional building are part of the life cycle, because we also had to take into account that we should we have dispose of old and traditional and now even new material if we don't use it in the building anymore. So we have to think about what's happened when we have, for instance, a chemical product as an insulation on the building. What's happened in 20, 30 years? What happened with that material? Maybe then it's a special waste and we have other problems, and we should also include that in a life cycle approach here, of course. Life cycle also means that we keep, this is a little bit related to the first one, keep everything in use as long as it lasts, include a regular care and maintenance, because it was the worst information we could give to heritage owners. Do this, and then you have 30 years nothing to do with that building. Yeah, but the point is that after 30 years you have a big problem, and not you solve the small problems you have on the way to that point. And it's very important that I always, and I'm coming from a different perspective, because I'm always working in process improvement. We should definitely work on identify and solve the cause of poor performance of a building, and not on symptoms. Because when we say we have a problem with energy efficiency, the first step is not that the energy efficiency is the first thing we have to do. So we cover that with insulation. Mostly the point is to think what is happening in the past that the building is not having the performance we need. So for instance, the first thing is to look at water, because water is the cause for a poor performance and not the energy efficiency itself. And it's needed a holistic approach to energy efficiency. It's not only to say, yeah, we look at the small thing on U values of a window. The effect of this is when you improve the U value in a window, then you move I think it's called the tau point. So the point where the water is the material, as the water in the wall is then visible on the wall. In the frame of in the wall around the windows. So then you have a problem in the wall and not anymore in the window. So you reduce your chance to improve the building even more. So why it's in life cycle important? Of course, we had in the past, and that's one thing when you look at the carbon cycle on traditional buildings, you might always hear, "Naya, we had some materials, they are might not so good for the environment." Or we used chalk and burn that, and we lose then CO2, and that's make our balance very bad. Yeah, but the only point is, the only positive thing here is, if you use the chalk in his life on the building, he recover from get all the CO2 back from the air because it needed to be strengthened. So therefore, it's more or less clima neutral. We have short distances when we produce the building, so we had regional products as well. So when we look at the problems we had in COVID-19, we thought our ancient people was maybe not so bad in building and construction building, and this was mainly erected by human power, and that of course is CO2, but if we would not live on the Earth, we would not have any CO2 emission, of course. But this, I think, it's not. We cannot call that as a problem. And we should. This was always in the past there that when we had some things, they have to be refurbished. We try to use this material in the building itself. So sometimes we have walls with several materials in the building because maybe there was a bomb hitting the wall in the for called the Osman wars maybe as an example. Then we have to use that what was broken down. We use it again for the building. So it's also a very advanced thinking about reuse of the material we have. Yeah, and the second thing is as we mentioned, we start with the values and the spirit of the place. So our life cycle do not start with that what is was visible there, what is the substance. It starts already what is the significance, was the value, why we had that building, and then we have to think about what is appropriate. When I remember when we had the project we had a pilot training for the first project in UK, and there was a modern small watercraft plant, and it was very clear that it is in line with the spirit of the place. So that fits very well. So it's perfect to do it, but in some other things it might be a problem. So if you, for instance, put on a historic or a traditional building which is often photographed from the air, then you put a photovoltaic on the roof, it might change the impression. So that's definitely a point where we're not very happy about that. And of course, the buildings usually are very not just straight in that what they was built. So I would say there is other problems with the performance of photovoltaic plants as well, because they might not work because there is any shadow on it and so on. And of course, we're thinking about keeping that all in that circle and not losing anything here in that life cycle. So then the concept of the embodied energy is a very important thing, because if you have an old building, it's already built, you have embedded energy in the building. And if you destroy it and build it new, you need then 3 times the energy, maybe more than 3 times, because the first one, the historic building, it was built maybe with a lower energy rate. So this is also an argument to keep the building in shape for a long period of time. So I think that's just a picture of what good and poor intervention could happen. So if you do it good, it's nearly 10 times longer durable as you do it in a poor way. And this is also a reason that we have to tell the craftsperson how to do it to make sure that we have it in a good way. I think this is now the point to hand over, so to ask questions. And after this picture, John could start with the energy efficiency in building itself, because of course we have troubles with topics with the energy efficiency of building. We lose energy in the building, but the question is how we reduce it and what measures are appropriate. So,
thank you very much indeed, Gerald.
Yeah.
So we take questions now, right? And you stop sharing the screen, maybe, for the next presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, are there any questions, dear audience? That was quite a rush. Yeah, Pedro, come on. Do you have a question? Who has a question? Please go ahead. Shall we hand over the mic?
Now you repeat the question, please.
Do you have a rough idea of the percentage of historical building in the energy consumption of the building stock?
The percentage, the question is about the percentage, a rough estimate of the percentage of, could you repeat that? Of the weight of the historical buildings in the energy consumption? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the answer is quite easy, but not satisfying, because the problem we have is for traditional buildings, the figures we are using are not correct. So if you go and make an in situ measurement for box type windows or sash windows, you get totally different values. And therefore, if you look at the energy consumption, which is assigned to historic building, it's much too high from our point of view. On the other hand, when we're not talking about that and not that's a problem we also have when we talked about internal in the project. What we don't do are pre-measurements and after measurements. So how we can say what is the improvement? In only very rare situation, we do have these prior and after measurements to tell how big was the impact. So there are two points for the data quality. But if you ask me, and I was sure that the question came, but I forgot about to prepare. Sorry about, but it's just a second.
Was that a good answer to your question so far? Any other? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask just for clarification about this subject of research. What in your project means historical building? Traditional building in terms of time or period?
You heard the question, right?
Yeah, I heard the question. What is the traditional building we include in the project? May I hand over the question to John, because I'm sure that he will have it in his presentation, and he's our expert on that. So,
well, different countries will categorize a traditional building by different ages. Some countries in Europe say before 1945. Others to 1960. In UK, we say before 1919, and we got a specific reason for that, because in 1919 there was a Housing Act, which meant that local authorities had to build houses for rent, social housing, and there was a building boom in the 1920s, and the common type of construction then was cavity wall. So we say before 1919 we have solid wall construction. But there are other standards in the UK which categorize traditional buildings in another way, not by age, but by construction type. So there's a document called PAS 2035, which is for retrofitting buildings for energy efficiency. And in that particular document, we say any building with solid vapor permeable walls is determined to be a traditionally constructed building. I don't know whether that answers your question, but
Now I will continue with the point because we had, of course, a problem with that. The problem was what data we can use to define or to show what is the impact of our trainings project here, to develop a training and say how much energy we will save, or how many GHG emission we can reduce. So the only database I found which is consistent over all European countries, it was one which said the category is one building category until the 1945, and we use that knowing that it's not correct for our project, but it's the best we have.
okay. How do I put this presentation?
Do I have to change the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether I need a speaker really or a microphone.
Sorry, which is
Yes,
this one?
the bottom one. Yeah, that's one. Yeah,
This
that's it. Okay. Okay. Can I bring it over here? It's not gonna. Okay. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. We've got here in the end, at last. At one point, I thought I wasn't going to be saying anything this afternoon because of the IT problems. I'm based in the UK, Wales specifically, but I work all over the UK, and I've worked in other countries as well. I've been working with the Pro Heritage Project and other European projects with Gerald for quite some time now. The first thing I want to do is make sure we're all on the same page. You know, what is retrofit? Retrofit is adding something to a building that didn't have it when it was first constructed. So it's adding to a building. But if we look at what energy efficiency means, used to describe things that use only as much energy as is needed without wasting any. So energy efficiency is the way we should be thinking, because that means we're doing all sorts of things to buildings to make them more energy efficient. But when we just focus on retrofit, and unfortunately too many people do, we're only retrofitting the building and not taking the opportunity to do other things to the building. Now, I think sometimes it's difficult to explain exactly what this is all about to people who know nothing about the subject. So the way in which I describe it is by looking at a process. And this is a process I developed for the Institute of Historic Building Conservation a few years ago. So it takes you through all the different things you need to think of and do when you're considering making a building more energy efficient. Everything from understanding the heritage values down to inspection and test plans you would deploy when you are implementing the work. So let's look at the first part of that process. That's about assessing significance. So we know what is most important about the building from a heritage perspective. That's what we'll do first. That's number one. The second thing we'll do is carry out a condition survey. But that condition survey is a proper survey of a building, taking a building pathological approach. And also that also means we're looking at the way we use buildings, we're looking at the environment in which the building is situated, and we use all that information. And then the third thing we do is we create or develop an energy efficiency certificate. Okay, an energy efficiency certificate, and I'll talk more about the detail of that in a moment. And then we come to stage 4, and I know it's a bit light in here, so maybe you cannot see the changes I'm making, but you know, I'm on stage 4 right now. But before we get to stage 4, we must do 1, 2, and 3. What order we do 1, 2, and 3 in doesn't really matter that much. But when we get to stage 4, we're looking at that energy performance certificate. We're working out whether it's accurate. We're working out whether the recommendations from it are necessary. Are they worthwhile? Are they damaging to the building? Are they technically feasible? And look at it all in that respect. We're looking at the condition survey. We're looking at the information it gives us about the building. And we're also looking at the things that the condition survey is telling us to do to the building, that the works we can do to the existing building fabric to make it more energy efficient. And we're considering all of that, taking on board the knowledge we've got on significance. So in number 4, we're evaluating a mix of works and measures that we can undertake to the building to make the building more energy efficient. And then we go on to the next stage, whereby we do a cost-benefit analysis, because there may be a number of things we can do to a building, a number of options we can take in order to improve the energy performance, but some will be more cost-effective than others. And then we get on to stage 6, whereby we are going to test our proposals against the impact they will have on the significance of the building. And we do that through heritage impact assessments. It could be that when we're doing the heritage impact assessment, we want to change the proposal because there's too much impact on significance, or we may tweak it. We may have to go back up to number 4, number 5, and number 6, and go around a bit of a circle before we determine what we want to do to the building. And that takes us to number 7. We want to finalize proposals, design and specify the work, but at this particular stage, we must also think about the way we are going to control that work once we are on site during the implementation stage. And then when we reach that implementation stage, we need to make sure the work's done properly. And then finally, we'll have an audit and an evaluation. Now, that's very briefly what the retrofit process and energy efficiency improvement process is all about. Now, we haven't got much time, so I'm only going to focus on a few of these particular issues here. So when it comes to the significance analysis, we'll inspect the building. We'll work out all the changes which are taking place during its lifespan, bits which have been demolished, other bits which have been added, and then we'll assess that building against heritage values. You can use individual heritage values, and I tend to use these group values you see on the screen. The aesthetic value, the way the building looks, or part of the way, or part of that building, the way it looks. Does it look good? Does it look not so good? So is it somewhere in between? And this is quite a subjective thing to do. You know, how have the aesthetics changed in the building? Have they changed in a negative way or in a positive way? We look at the evidential value. This is a very broad value about how the building provides evidence of the past. We look at the communal value, which is how people relate to the building today and in their living memory. And then we've got the historical value about the association that the building may have with a significant historic event that may have taken place in the building, such as somebody famous being born there or died there, or whether there is a significant episode in history that brought about the initial development of the building or a significant change. And that's just an example of the sort of things we would look at. And each of these, and when we're doing that analysis, we'll be giving each part of the building a level of significance. So you can see on the screen, on the plan there, I've coloured in, this is a building in central London. This is just one of the floors. We'd be saying some parts of the building are high significance, other parts are low significance, and other parts which may be somewhere in between. Because that tells us how sensitive each part of the building will be to change, whether it's adaptation, whether it's any type of energy efficiency improvement or retrofit. So that tells us what's important about the building. And then as far as the condition survey is concerned, then that must be a proper condition survey, taking a building pathological approach. And the outcome of a survey of a building, it depends on a number of things, really. First of all, it depends on the competence of the surveyor, or the competence of the person inspecting the building. It's about the equipment that's being used. It's about the overall approach. Is it just a glimpse and a glance around the building, or is it doing a detailed building pathological analysis? And let's bear in mind that, you know, this is the foundation of everything else that follows. If you get this wrong, you may be wasting thousands and thousands of euros in terms of the work that follows this particular stage. So around 80% of all problems in buildings are to do with moisture. And if you want to take a big risk, then retrofit a traditional building and disregard the moisture issue, because that you will be for sure be detrimentally affecting that building due to moisture problems. So we always know what's going on inside a building, as the data shows on the right hand side, and we marry that up to work out how much moisture is being produced. And that's the sort of approach we would take. So as I said, it's not just about the condition of the building, it's about the construction of the building, it's about the use of the building and the environment in which the building finds itself. And then we got the energy efficiency assessment. And this is a big problem, I think, because what we're trying to do, we're trying to categorize the energy performance of a building in the same way we would with a refrigerator or gas cooker. And those appliances are a lot more simple than buildings, any buildings, and certainly traditionally constructed buildings. But that's what we've got to do. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of research has indicated that the way in which we categorize and assess the energy performance of buildings is not particularly good. And if we look at what we call in the UK RDSAP, which is a very simple way in which we'll assess the energy performance of a dwelling, then we know that where traditional buildings are concerned, we usually underestimate the performance of the building. So when we're actually implementing the measures which are recommended from the EPC, we're not going to improve the building by the percentage that the EPC says, because the building's already performing better than what we're estimating through the production of that EPC. But we're stuck with it. It provides a starting point, I always believe, a starting point. But when we're looking at the recommendations from an EPC, let's scrutinize them properly. Let's look at how accurate the EPC is. Let's look at how technically feasible it is to actually install some of these measures which are recommended. Do it properly and you'll end up not doing some of the things which are recommended, in my experience. And that's when it comes to the evaluation of the works that we should be undertaking. I've already mentioned in stage 4, we evaluate a mix of works and measures that we would implement. When it comes to the retrofit measures, we can use an online tool such as this guidance wheel, which is free to use. And this is an excellent piece of equipment because it takes you to a whole building approach. So the problem we have with EPCs, it may recommend 5 things to do to the building, and you may be minded to think, oh, I'm only going to do 3 of them. That could lead to unintended consequences that you could be creating in the building. Not a sustainable approach, but making the building worse. So when you use this wheel, if you put your cursor on, say, walls, as I've done there, it tells you to look at other things as well, about 6 or 7 other things. You see where the arrow springs out. And when you put your cursor on the end of one of those arrows, then you see other arrows springing out to take you to other things as well, other things you should consider. Now, when people say to me, I only do deep retrofit, I don't laugh in their face, but I am amused sometimes because I always say, have you assessed the building? No, not yet. Or I say, how much work can you do? How can you determine how much work you can do to that building unless you've assessed the building first? Now, when you're using this wheel, it will take you towards the most you can do to a building in a safe manner. That may be light retrofit. It may be deep retrofit. It may be Enefit. But this wheel will take you to the level of retrofit that you can implement in a building. And then we got heritage impact assessments. I mentioned that once you've determined what you want to do to the building, then you assess that against the effect on the heritage values. And you do that through heritage impact assessments. And just very briefly, because we haven't got much time, as you know, that if you look at this heritage impact assessment on the right-hand side, and this is something I use, this is for external wall insulation on an old warehouse building I've been working on in Manchester in the north of England. That's about, what's it say there? It's about putting in external wall insulation onto the building. That's what you see in the proposal and location. In the next column, we've got reasons for the proposal. Well, obviously, because we want to make the building more energy efficient. Then we've got the significance. We detail what the significance is of the building and that wall of the building, or the walls of the building. Then we've got a column called reference and research. And that then allows the person looking at the heritage impact assessment to look at all the other reports that I may have done and other people in the project team may have done, so you can get the background and all of that and work out whether this makes sense to the reader of it or not. And then we've got the possible impact on significance. Then we've got the mitigation. How can we mitigate the impact? Then what we must also include all the time is other options that we did consider and detail why we rejected those other options. And then we've got the conclusions, of what we're going to do. Sometimes you'll produce these and you know where you're going. Other times you produce these and say, we can't do this, there's too much impact. But that's the basis of a heritage impact assessment. It considers all the issues you should consider in a very methodical way. Then we got detailed design. Now, I haven't got much time, but a few things to consider when it comes to detailed design is that when we're looking at insulation, for example, some materials are no good for traditionally constructed buildings because they're impermeable. What we want are materials that are both vapor permeable and hygroscopic, whereby they absorb moisture, they release moisture, and those materials are not detrimentally affected by moisture. So you can see photographs of all these different materials here. How many of them is there? 9 of them. And you can see I put crosses against some of them because they're just not suitable for traditional buildings. So we have to consider the materials. We have to consider the overall design. So if you can see in the cross section here, what I'm showing here is external wall insulation, loft insulation at the eaves, and you can see there's a gap. So what's that gap going to achieve? What will we get through that gap? We've lost thermal cohesion. So what are we going to find through that gap? What are we creating? It's called a thermal bridge, a thermal bridge. We see it all the time. So what we want to make sure we got the correct design. So there's a lot to be thought about in that respect. And at this particular stage, we should also be thinking about how can we make sure that this work is properly implemented on site. And the way we would do that is to do a design and specification non-compliance risk assessments. And we work out the areas of work whereby if we were just to inspect the work on completion, then we wouldn't know whether they've been undertaken properly or not. And once we've got those lists of works whereby we would not know whether they're completed properly or not just by visual inspection, then we need to determine the impact that would be created if they were not implemented properly. And once we've whittled it all down to that particular shortlist, then that's the list of works and measures whereby we expect the contractor to take a very proactive approach in managing quality. And it means the contractor then has to produce inspection and test plans as part of that quality management process. And you can see what an inspection and test plan is here. I don't know whether any of you use these plans, but it involves the contractor breaking down the specified work into the production process and looking at each of the different stages where there's a check and inspection that takes place, right from the delivery of materials to the storage materials, to doing work to the existing building, to actually going through the implementation of I think it's internal wall insulation in this respect. And this is filled in every day in this example here, and the contractor will send it to the person supervising the work on behalf of the client. And so therefore, the client supervisor knows what's going on every day. Evidence is attached in the form of photographs or anything else. And therefore, you're producing a paper trail, which means that when it comes to the audit, which I'll talk about at number 10, then there's a paper trail to look at as well. So during that implementation stage, we must see those inspection and test plans, at least for some of the work, the most risky parts of the work. The other thing we need to consider at that implementation stage, that we've got competent people doing the work. Now, at each of these particular stages, we need competent people. But when it comes to the craftsperson, installing the insulation or repointing the mortar joints or repairing the windows or installing the secondary glazing, we need people who are competent at doing that work. Then we got the post-occupancy evaluation. And the only way this is going to work properly is if we properly assess the building before we do any work to it whatsoever. We'll take data. For example, we'll take what the relative humidity levels are inside the internal spaces of the building. Okay? And then on completion of the work, we'll actually assess the building again, evaluate the building again. And for example, I've spoken about relative humidity levels. Let's take the relative humidity levels again. Are they better or worse? Are they the same? And then once the building is in use, then we'll go through that process all over again. And we'll take all the data, including relative humidity levels. So if we got a relative humidity level in use that's high, At least we can compare it with the relative humidity levels that were recorded on completion and before work was executed. But if you don't take that data at the beginning, how do you know what effect the retrofit and energy efficiency improvements have made to the building? So you've got to do this properly. Otherwise, you're going to be scratching your head and thinking, we haven't got any data to compare this with. I wish we'd taken that data. That's why we've got to do it properly. And when it comes to the audit, well, what is the audit? An independent audit. I used to work for English Heritage, whereby I was responsible for the quality management of their largest grant scheme. We used to give money to people to do work on historic buildings. And I had a team of surveyors and architects in the regional offices of English Heritage who used to go out and monitor the work to make sure that our money is being well spent. Well, this is a more sophisticated approach to what we were taking many years ago. It's about us understanding whether clients are actually getting what they're paying for. It can be undertaken independently, not part of the professional team on the project, not part of the contracting organizations, but somebody outside that that's giving a grant. They can look at the paper trail through the inspection and test plans. And then we got the questions which are being asked at the top. But basically the contractor, the installer, okay, plans all this. They've got to produce the inspection and test plans. The person, we call them a clerk of work sometimes, independent quality checker working on behalf of the client, will receive all that information and undertake their own tests if necessary. And that person there is providing the evidence to the project auditor. So it's a proper quality management process. It's a more sophisticated approach than many people are taking, but that's the approach we should be taking.
5 more minutes, John.
5 more minutes, okay. Well, anyway, I just want to emphasize the fact that we need to be competent. Everybody needs to be competent at each part of that particular process. I'm afraid, certainly I can speak for the UK, we've seen a lot of incompetence, I'm afraid, and the UK is trying to do something about it, not enough in my book. We need to make sure that we're deploying all the correct equipment all the time, especially when we're analysing the building. You know, let's take the data. If we take in data, we can use the data. If we're not using the right equipment, we cannot take the data at all. And then we have to put good and proper processes in place. So we've got a methodical way of doing things. Otherwise, how do we know that we're working consistently in a good manner to the correct standards? 4 more minutes, but now I'm out of time. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, John. And you still owe us the definition of a historic building, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I thought I answered that one. I've got my own definition,
Go ahead.
and that is a building with heritage values. And I will say that all traditionally constructed buildings have got some level of significance. And when it's a protected building, it's got an awful lot of significance. But all traditional buildings have got some, and sometimes it may be very tiny. But I would say that is my definition of an historic building.
Excellent. Do you agree? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your story, and it was very amazing in all the procedures in order to empower heritage protection. What I wanted to ask, do you have any experience with listed buildings? So the buildings where the values are determined, and maybe they are of high priority, and maybe there are also restrictions what you can do and what you can't do. So does it make some alternative in this process, or there are some other issues you would like to point out? Thanks.
Yeah, I've got a lot of experience of listed buildings and scheduled monuments. I used to work for CADU, which is the Welsh Government's Historic Environment Service, and I was the director responsible for managing our estate, including World Heritage Sites. They are particularly challenging places, but I would say that, and we can show this by example on what we did there and other organisations doing as well, that we should never say never about improving the energy performance of historic buildings. But we need to assess the buildings properly and decide what we can do properly, working through that process I've just shown you there. And it could be there are many things we would like to do that we will not do because there is too much impact on significance. But I would approach it the same way. The only thing is, when we're doing that assessment of significance in number 1, we're probably going to find ourselves in a situation whereby, you know, like at the Hofburg Palace, the significance is so great that we are very limited. Whereas if you've got traditionally constructed buildings which have not got that listed status, then there's a lot more we can do to them. And that's where the significance assessment comes into account. When I showed you the slide earlier, where we've coloured in different parts of the building, we know there's a greater scope in some areas because they're not particularly significant, and less scope in the areas with very high significance. And that's the way we would approach it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, one more.
Thank you very much for this very interesting and clear presentation. Obviously, you stressed the importance of proper condition assessment. I saw the aid of some devices, etc. But it's mainly, I guess, visual, non-destructive inspections. And my question is, is it based on some kind of national code or maybe international standard, or was it something that you formulated yourself?
A bit of everything, really. I did work on the European standard for, they call it Condition Surveys of Immovable Cultural Heritage Assets. I thought that's not a very good name, so why not call it a building or a structure? That's okay. It's not particularly high standard. Though, obviously, those of you who worked on European standards will know that some countries are up there somewhere, some countries are down there somewhere, so you're meeting in the middle. And I would say a British standard I led on is more robust, but I would say probably based upon a British standard called BS 7913, largely based upon that.
Thank you very much indeed. We have still 2 more minutes. So if there are any further questions, please go ahead. If not, thanks a lot, John, for this amazing presentation. And now it's Gerald's term again. Gerald, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, and I would like to add things to the answer of John, because the project is exactly that. The point here that we will combine the English standard, and I think the Austrian standard is also quite high, that we formulated from this background the European standard we will achieve in our project.
This one, yes.
Sechs
We
du's
share
oder sechs
our
ich's?
screen, Gerald, with the presentation. Yes. We came to the third part of our workshop today about certification and validation of traditional skills for cultural heritage. Gerald, you can just go ahead,
Yeah.
and I will move forward with the slides. Okay.
Good.
But we don't see him now. No?
What? You can
Okay.
see me?
No, but then maybe he should share his screen.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, then I will do
Gerald,
it.
we can only see you when you were sharing your screen.
Yeah, I thought so when I had the presentation of John. It was quite easy for me because I know it. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, I have. Yeah, sorry. I started and stopped, and then I did not continue, of course.
We will do that presentation together. My name is Gabriele Sauberer. I'm a Vice President of ECQA, which is the certifying body within that project. ECQA stands for European Certification and Qualification Association. So Gerald prepared the presentation and will guide us through. And whenever it will be technical in terms of certification of persons, I will comment. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you should see it.
Yes, we
Okay.
see everything.
So it's related to certification and validation of the traditional skills for cultural heritage, because we said at the beginning, we are developing on these 2 pillars, let me call it, the climate protection and the energy efficiency in historic or in traditional buildings, a training which is called Energy Expert for Cultural Heritage, where we put all this stuff we had discussed today in that training so that the craftspeople know what they have to do. So Good. What I will explain is a little bit how we develop our approach. So we had on one hand an analytical procedure or the approach. We had looked at, and it's a very deep, detailed workshop in 2019 together with John to get an alignment within the consortium on the appropriate energy efficiency measures. Because it was very important to say, when we talk about energy efficiency or the appropriate energy efficient measures, do we all talk about the same? And we did that, and we was quite happy because the overlaps was quite big, but there was still some refreshments or alignments needed. The second one was we looked at the relevant traits. We said which were traits we do need, which are the traits they had an impact on energy efficiency, because that's always our focus. We looked at the relevant working procedures within that traits to make a video on that, to have that on one hand documented, and on the other hand also an ad for the training itself, so that they can have a look on that. Finally, we looked at best practice examples based on the alignment to see where we can show that this, what we discussed, had already been done. And we put 14 of these best practice together. And of course, there was a second part. It was the trainings expertise. So we had to analyze the trainings providers which are already working in Europe on that field. To be honest, there was two factors limiting that. One factor was COVID, so we could not visit all. So we had to do some online checks with these trainings providers, which are, good, but it's not that what we really will achieve. So maybe we will do some of them later on as well and repeat it. But we found out that most of the providers are not covering all that what we have in our curriculum and our project. We defined the curriculum and the learning outcomes. As you know, that's the trainings procedure. We developed the trainings material and of course, the exam questions. When I look at the analytical one a little bit more in detail, and this was the building I thought John will show. Historic buildings have different characteristics. So we had to understand that if you treat an historic building like a modern building, you will have some damages or problems you might not expect. And the opposite as well. So the point is, we have to know what building we have in front of us to make sure that we do the right things. If you look at a modern building, it's mostly it's moisture blocking. So avoid moisture, which is maybe anywhere around. When you look at historic building, the main characteristic is moisture management. So we think where the water coming from, where is the water, what the damages they do, and how we can maybe reduce it or find another way for them. What relevant traits we are looking at? Of course, we have different traditional skills. So one is, of course, the walls with bricklayer, stonemason, mason, and so on. We have some roofs with slater, roofer, and so on, and go further. Also, the roof constructions, there are some traits relevant, also related to windows and doors. We need some professions. And we have additional so-called general functions or general professions which also need to know about that. Not in detail. They have not to do, for instance, the proper approach for a slater or roofer, but they have to understand what they have to procure on the market, that they get the right thing. So that's a facility manager, a maintenance manager, or a state of the site manager. These are also, so we include also the so-called white collar people in that project as well. Here we go. There are a little bit we see, and this is important, we have different working procedures, different traditional skills, because if you look at the window, you don't have one craft person working. So we have several, and they have to work together. And also, you have to think about where you get your traditional material as well when you look at the maintained walls, for instance. Yeah, and then we looked at several best practice projects where we look at appropriate energy efficiency measures. It also includes some insulation, because sometimes it's needed, but it's, as we said, you have to do it in a proper way. We also looked at photo renewables as well. to have a basic to say that we already use these appropriate measures for the buildings we are in charge for. So now we have to talk about the development approach. So the trainings expertise comes now in detail. Now we go to the where we're visiting the trainings providers. So the on-site study visits we could do was the Charter House in Mauerbach. It's the Austrian Information and Further Education Center of the Monument Protection Office, which is quite well known for this work. We're also visiting a company in Banska Štiavnica, which is an interesting approach. They train other professionals to do the work when they don't have so much work in their books. Then we was visiting the Bauarchiv Tierhaupten, which is very similar to the Charter House. We were visiting the engine shed in Edinburgh, UK, which is a very advanced center here as well. We had then two smaller things, the Warwick Bridge Corn Mill and the Footprint Building, because they also made provide some trainings. And we also had one visit in Gesaška Škola in Croatia, which shows us what is already there, and we could maybe build on that, and maybe we will have future cooperation partner for running the trainings in Europe, together with the European Heritage Academy, which is the organization we established after the first project, the modified project for the maintenance management. We also had some online study visits. As I said, this was not so perfect, but it was okay. We had a look at the Restauración y Formación Albarracín, which is in Spain. They had renovated or refurbished an entire city and also trained the people there working there. Also the Santa Maria la Real and two organizations in Slovakia, the Academia Nistropolitana Nova, and it's more or less a project Arthur, which also do some trainings. So we had a look on what is available in Europe. We still have study visit planned for in UK, in Sweden, and even we had in France something planned, but this was definitely hit by Corona, because this was already planned and we have to postpone it for the moment. Yeah, and then we developed the curriculum, and you can have a look on that. What we include here, we say the historic building had some requirements. You have to understand what is an intervention, a good intervention, a poor intervention. You have to think about the process and the principles of conservation. You have to know it, otherwise you cannot do the heritage impact assessment. You have to know about traditional materials and recognize what it is. You have, as John already said, we had sustainability principles as a basic included, and also the interactive retrofit tool, so that not only our UK friends can work with that, so that we also all in Europe can use this as a structured brainstorming tool. Then we have included a unit which is maintenance actions in a generic way. So what is the impact of poor work? What is drought proofing, insulation, building services, so that we understand that on a basic level. Then we go deeper to see also what's happening if you insulate, with all the advantage and disadvantage based on that what John already said. And then we have some building elements. We have a closer look on it. So how to repair window, floors, wall repair, shutters, blinds to give some shadows. And of course also roof and roof constructions. And at least we should not forget about the renewables, because it's also part of the project. So we will have a unit as well. And the last one is, I showed just a short version because there is a working practice element which shows out how to do it, and then let me call it a deepen up in the trainings material for selected crafts. So you might have a document for the carpenter where all the measures which are relevant for this craft are included here. So if someone is looking at that, he has one or she has one trainings material to look at to get familiar with that, what we discuss and train in our courses.
Gerald, may I
Yes.
add here? Could you this is not only the curriculum, this is the so-called skills card. Yeah, these
The
are
starting
all
point to be
job
right,
roles.
or?
Yeah, these are we have a lot of job roles here. Yeah? So what the ProHeritage project is doing is standard setting, and not only for one country or region, but at the European level, yeah? Because we share the challenges, and we are. Let's say we all sit in the same boat, and we have a joint European cultural heritage. Yeah? So what we see here with this unit and elements, these are the building blocks of the certificate. The skills card is the heart of the certificate, because it's actually a driving license. It's not a certificate for experts, who did theoretical courses. Yeah? It's all about being able to apply, being able to apply these skills, these ancient skills in practice. Yeah? So this is what the certificate is all about. The curriculum, the training, reflecting the skills and competences needed. Thank you, Gerald.
Yeah.
You can move on.
Gabriele, you always blame me because I had separated the job role in curriculum, learning outcomes, and questions, but you can understand it in one. The discussion we always have. Yeah, and then we define the learning outcomes for each of these learning elements, so that we exactly know what should the person who participate in the training should be able to know and to apply after the training.
And this is actually the name of the job role, the overall, the ECQA certified energy expert for, please read it out. Yes, for cultural heritage.
Exactly. That's the name, and under this it will be then visible on the ECQA website, and also on the learners and the learning platform of the European Heritage Academy after the project ends.
So that every stakeholder exactly knows what this person is able to do. It's like you're familiar with the European computer driving license. This was the first success story in issuing certificates for persons at the European level, where both those who have the skills understand what is needed to be literate, to be computer literate, but also people who hire these persons can expect that they, have a sound basis of computer skills. And the ECQA methodology is following this approach. So we identify the skills and competences needed in practice, in our case at the European level, and then we just describe skills and build also the curricula. With the learning.
One of the additional benefits of the job role committee, because we was asked this question in another project, is how we integrate a life cycle in that education, in that trainings. So how we can ensure that we update the trainings and the skills card, and also the trainings and the certificates. Because we have organized a job role committee, and maybe you will explain a little bit the role and the task of this.
Because no organization or no consortium, like in our case, alone can do that job. To continuously update the skills, to check training materials, etc. So that's why the European dimension here means that as many really drivers, organizations such as yours, should be invited and included in these job role committees to really safeguard the quality of the certificate. That's the main point. So you are all cordially invited to join us, to have a look at this skill card and the respective exam questions, because this is what the quality of a certificate is all about, that the skills and competences are state of the art, And as John said, of course, it's always a consensus. You know, it's a, you know, at EU level, what is a minimum requirement actually.
I will continue here today. I think we will not show the questions, of course, not only because we don't have it ready, but also because, of course, it should be hide for someone who will do the exam, of course. But we already experienced from the maintenance manager, when we did that for the practical parts we had there, it was a challenge to really define a question which have a proper answer, so that we cannot have, or we will not have discussions about the answer. So that will be a challenge for the consortium still, to define good questions and make sure that we don't have discussions after the first exams.
And however, the multiple choice questions, as you know, this is only one part of the exam. Way more important is to have a discussion, an oral exam, we call it, with the expert, to really understand what are the reference projects, how experienced is this person, and is he or she really able to apply all these skills and competences required in the certificate in practice.
Yeah.
So that's the main part actually, and we have something prepared, Gerald, about this procedure, right?
Yeah, we are not ready with that, but we have to discuss that, of course, because in the maintenance manager project we had a written exam on online and multiple choice, and then an oral examination. And I think we will still have that, but maybe we think also about that we have a practice session, so that they show what they learned in the training, so that we see that they handle what we discussed in a proper way, so they could really apply. I'm not sure, we haven't discussed that in the group, in the consortium, but I think it makes sense. It's a bit interesting because the examiner, the one who is making doing these examinations, is in the room, but maybe we will discuss it internally first. Okay.
And you prepared slides about this procedure. That's what I meant. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to make clear what is certification and the other terminologies, but that I hand over to you. It's your special.
We heard already, like an audit, in an audit, you have an independent third party, which is not a training provider or the expert himself or herself, but an external party. And with the certification, it's the same. It's an independent third party that is just, issuing the certificate, a confirmation that this person complies to the standard. It's always the same here. And as we said, this skill card is the new European standard, for that profession. And that's what ECQA is certifying. Various validation, and Gerald, you could comment on that. This is quite important for the procedure of how to get certified. We, of course, do not force experts to to take a course. This would be ridiculous. Many of you,
and it would be difficult for the trainers as well.
Yeah. So this is also one part. If an experienced person with a lot of reference project, these projects will be validated in terms of experts in our consortium, and in that job role committee will discuss it and will assess it, and will come to the conclusion, yes, this person, of course, is qualified or not. And then it's going to be recognized. However, this still does not mean that you will skip the oral exam or the written exam, because the written exam, I wouldn't underestimate it. It is this kind of state-of-the-art factual knowledge. Any profession evolves, and that's why, of course, you should be able to answer state-of-the-art questions about a job role. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's just the way how it works when you have recognition validation. So you can do a self-assessment on the exam portal of ProHeritage or then European Heritage Academy. Then you have the own decision on validation or training. So what you prefer, what you see after the self-assessment. If you see self-assessment is working, then you have to prove that, of course, because we have to know what you know, what your experience is. And therefore, this document should be then submitted, maybe about the export exam portal. That's the way we think about it, but we haven't realized it yet. Then these submitted documents will be checked, and then which is discussed within the job role committee or a so-called committee. In the committee, they will then make a decision about it. And then when we say yes, then it will be a certificate by the ECQA. If we say that if we have this person, they tried this self-assessment and see no, training is better, then they should register for the training and run through the training. And after this, we had to check of the participation and written project report, which was very important because if you have a project report written, the examiner had a good chance to get familiar with that, what this person has done. And if that is good, then usually the multiple choice with the 66% will not be a problem. But at the end, there is an oral exam where the participants or the candidate should show to present and defend the measures and the approach shown in the real project. And then we had also to inform the ECQA and issue a certificate. That is the procedure, more or less. Maybe you talk a little bit about this learning cycle.
This is the very simple learning cycle, actually. As I said already, the self-assessment gives you the opportunity to check where are your gaps, or if you have, let's say, more than 66% of correct answers in all the elements. You obviously are pretty mature. You maybe would not consider then to take a course. However, I must a lot of other certificates, even experts, for even those who were driving this profession, actually reported back that they really liked the training, because it confirmed also, what they assumed and what they did for a couple of years. So even those usually benefit from trainings, but of course you're not obliged to do that. You moved on now.
This is automatic, Ellie, sorry.
And then you can just decide. It's a visualization of what has been said, actually, and you also, it's a system where you always use transparent processes. You're uploading your evidence, and there are every member in this chain is certified by ECQA. Everything is standardized, so whenever all the criteria are very clear and transparent, and there is this a process for that. And everything is grouped around the skill card. That's why these job role committees are so important, because there the expert have to agree on possible changes of the skill card and in the exam questions.
Okay. So just to make a close-up of the ProHeritage project, because the BIM project of Pedro is not included in that project, but it's also related to cultural heritage. So our expectation at the end, the main achievements will be, we have developed and tested training courses, including curriculum and training materials, so that we have been ready to start the trainings. We have a certification validation process developed. That's true. That's already done. We have identified the potential training providers, which we will work together. We also have developed videos with procedures for craftspersons' work. We already did last Saturday the first 5 videos for craftspersons in Austria, so we are already working on that as well. And of course, the sustainability concept for running the trainings after the project end. That's the main results, many achievements we will have at the end here from ProHeritage. Yeah, and that's just the overall information. Who is coordinator? It's the Burghauptmannschaft Österreich. And who are the responsible person here? You find the website if you like to have more information about it, and also the ECQA as well. And from my side, thanks for attention.
Thank you so much, Gerald. Any questions from your side? We still have 2 minutes for taking questions. So would you consider joining us in the job role committee, or are you interested in taking a course or teaching in our trainings to qualify as ECQA certified trainer? That's also possible, of course. So whenever you are ready or interested, please reach out to us. I leave you my my business cards here. Great. Thank you so much. And now, last but not least, thank you. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you.
Last but not least, one of our dear members in the project, Pedro, is going to enlighten us about a best practice example in Portugal. Please.
Yeah, that's it. So what I'm going to do is I sent this proposal to the sustainable places, and it was and they proposed for me to join this within this group because I'm part of ProHeritage, and to, let's say, use it as a study case. And this is not coming out of this project, but it's it's something like a methodology in order to go to conservation and management plan for the presidential palace in Lisbon. The presidential palace. I'm the architect of the presidency. That's why I'm showing this. The presidential palace is situated like here. It's more or less like a modest palace that was defined to be the presidential palace in 1910 when we had the Republican Revolution, and we have also another small palace in Cascais. It's more or less like the summer palace of the president. Lisbon is past and future city as any other city in Europe, and the presidential palace is situated in not in the center of the town, but in what was the neighborhoods in the 19th century, and it's located near to the river, and it's this area that you can see right here. We are talking about 3.3 hectares of gardens and 19,500 square meters of construction, more or less. There are some plans from time, and this is not the previous one, but here we can almost discover the entire plans of the buildings like they are now. These are some of the images of the buildings. The one in the top is the one who's facing the river, and some others around. Of course, this presidential palace, of course, there's a lot of protocol and ceremonies that take place in the rooms, and it is the place where the president receives all the other presidents and the representatives of the entire world. These are more or less the protocol rooms where the things take place. But in the background, we have some contemporary architecture that is part of the structure, and so we have buildings that date from the 16th century, and we have some others that are from the 21st century. This is the coach museum that is added to the presidential palace and belonged to the structure of the palace. And what I'm going to show now is, let's say, the process that of some pieces of transformation that made that made the possibility of gathering a lot of information that is going to be useful next. So this is one of the first projects that was done in order to an intervention on the street, in order to make the sidewalk much bigger, because it was very small, and the guards that guard the entrance were on the street, and they needed a sidewalk, a correct sidewalk. And this is, let's say, the appearance of the sidewalk now, and where there's some lightening in order to make it clear that this building is a state area, and it's well, an important building for the city. This was moved because there was the need to make the entrance to the museum of the presidency. We had this building on the left that had no doors to the street, and there were some transformations in the inside. This building was already with a concrete structure made in the 1960s, and so here the project was about changing it into another function, and with a lot of improvements in all its performances. But I guess I have not that information here, but well, some images of the interior, and there was a store, because all the museums should enter by a store, or more important, get out by the store. That's the structure that all museums want to perform. And in the end, we just opened the windows down to the ground in order to transform it into doors. Another project was this ramp. This is the ceremonial entry where all the guests come in that are going to be received by the president. And this is how it was in the beginning, and that's the project on the other side. And but with a lot of infrastructure study, and with 800 meters of empty tubes crossing in all directions in order to think of the future, for all the future needs, and some images of the works being done. This was done in 1 month and 1 month and 1 week, the entire operation during the president's holidays. I had to give a hand, see, there and there, and up there, giving a hand. So in the end, there was a stairs on both sides, because it was very sleepy when it was raining. And well, the image on the end, we used some stones offered by the municipality to make something like a carpet on the entrance. Well, some ideas. This is another project that is another building that exists in the gardens. This was a bird's cage. This was a 18th century building, and were just for housing birds when Portugal had all the colonies and all the I don't know the name, the directors of the colonies had the mission to send the strange animals, tigers and leopards and leopards and gorillas and elephants and all the birds sent to Lisbon. And so this was a bird cage, but it was in a very poor state of conservation. As you can see, this is the plan of this building. The entire operation was more or less restoration, but it had some small openings here in order to provide a circuit in the interior, because it was meant to be used for the presidency museum. And of course, I showed the picture of the roofs. The tiles were collapsing, and so we needed to make a new structure, again in wood, with large areas to be easy to clean, some islands to hide the air conditioning machines. The stones was cleaning by I don't know the name. It's not water, but it's spread very small parts of water for days and days and days in order to make it clean. Well, some like steam, yes. All the iron pieces changed by stainless steel. Some fiber connections, because they are glass fiber connections for the statues so that they don't fall. Again, the same above. We looked for the small pieces, but some of them were just made with lime. And one interesting thing is that all the pieces that were missing, these pieces of missing of the fountains, were redone with the stone that were removed from the doors. Those doors I showed that they were opened. We used that stone found inside the walls to redo the pieces that were missing. So we used the same stone of the same age from the same place. So it's a funny operation. And okay, this is the end of it, with the water again falling down, and one image of the work on the end, because it was painted in rows. Because in the 1940s, every buildings of the state were painted in rows. I don't know why, but and we looked for the first colors. We understood it was in lime white. So we went back to that operation, and here it's we added a lot of lights, but they are hidden behind small pieces of stone, because and then in the end it's possible to use it as a scenery for state ceremonies, things like that. So all this information was let's say the base for thinking of the possibility of making a conservation management plan. And why? Because as the architect of all this, and because I'm inside, I have let's say it gives the opportunity to understand the needs, to know the persons involved, to have the drawings, and to recognize the relevance of every space, and this in order to go for something as complex as a conservation management plan. Of course, you should study other examples, understand what others are doing with it, in order to define the steps and the goals, and to see the way this one thing like this should work. So 4 steps for this. The first one is, as John was saying, the access significance. The research of history, the building's evolution, make some interviews of all the people that are related with this, access physical and structural features with the drawing research, with the 3D laser scan construction surveys that we have done and collected. Understand the needs of the palace, because this is a living building. It has a function, a political function. It has to work, and security and safety, the collections, the energy consumptions, the audits that we have done in these years. It's all this is important to take in account, and develop the policies to conserve the significance, to go for what the Borough Charter says about do as much as you can, changing the less possible in order to conserve significance. And so for the first stage, what we have done is to go to the State Heritage Archives that collect all the information about the buildings, have interviews here. It's interviews with all the former presidents that are still alive, and all the first ladies that are still alive, because this is a building that exists to serve the president. So the opinion of the president about the building, it's very important. Do they like it? Is it good? What is missing? What should be done? What was the most important construction of their term? All this is important to know, because we are from the architect's point of view, but maybe the presidents have something to say about it. So it's interesting to know them.
You asked even the first ladies.
Yes, and they asked even the first ladies.
Was the most relevant, maybe.
No. It was balanced. It was a lot of small ideas around it, but it was very interesting. Another thing I did was to interview all the architects that had worked in the presidency, and all the that had done things, but also this was the former butler. Okay, and this man was the guy who took care of the horses of a president of the 1950s. So it was from very important, let's say, people with a major importance to the ones that knew the small stories behind.
You could publish a book, maybe. The stories behind.
Yeah. There's a lot of small stories, and some of them are very interesting, and some of them explain why some things are the way they are, and sometimes you are looking at things and you are asking why this is like this, and suddenly someone who you never expected would say, no, this is what, because it happens this way, and it's fine. So another thing that we did was a 3D laser scan with the Faculty of Architecture. We had a lot of shots taken. Let me see if this happens. You see there. Is it working? Yeah. So this is the 336 scans. 300 hours of processing, all the infrastructure. Here we have a glance of the entire piece. And okay, let's go. Again, another thing we did was with another university, now the Engineer University, was a survey of assessing the structural vulnerabilities. Okay, Portugal is Portugal in Lisbon is a earthquake area. We had a huge earthquake in 1755, and it's said to be every 200/300 years another one. So we are with 268. So we are counting the time for the next one, and and a building that receives a major people from every area of the world, of course, should behave well in case of an earthquake. So we did an audit, a structural audit, trying to understand and to define inside all the structures, all the walls, all the pavements, and all this information was gathered in the plans, and all this information is now gathered. We even have now 3D models that have been shaken virtually in order to see where it collapses all the times. And we now have the reinforcements project ready, and we are going to do the works next year. So I will bring the information afterwards. Well, this is again some tables of all this information gathered in pieces of information, and I personally joined this project, the BIM for Heritage project, as well as the Pro Heritage, of course, that is the one that brings us here, okay, and again, for this conservation management plan, we have again, I'm sorry because there should be 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers here. They cannot be seen because of the resolution, but this is, let's say, the information that I would like to join in this BIM execution plan. Why? Because I am the architect now, but the building is been there for 300 years, and it will be there for another 300 years after I'm gone. So this information should be organized in order to pass it through for next generations. So for this execution plan, we need to okay. This fourth point, the last one, for developing the policies and thinking how this should be done. There are some phases, and the first phase would be to understand, to recognize the needs and the data acquisition. And of course, it's the history and the cultural significance I've mentioned. Define the rules of intervention, conservation, restorations. Let's say something like basic ways of doing things. What should be preserved whenever some things are done, but also this kind of fire hazard plan, the earthquake hazard plan, and the access control and permissions, because there are some areas that are more sensible than others, and there must be some definitions of who can go where. And of course, the building has inside some furniture, tapestry, chandeliers, the painting, sculptures, and all this is information that should be joined together, because some pieces are not from us. They belong to museums, and they are at our we are the keepers. And okay, and in the end, things very simple, like the air conditioned systems, the heating systems, in order to make it sure that everything is working properly. Again, the who and how, we need to define who will be able to join, because a BIM project to put in place, there must be useful for everybody that is working there, and we have to understand who can join the process, because it is only interesting if everybody can use it as the base. And so we have to understand, to define the levels of access, and it must be accessible to the political staff as well, because the political staff they are a part in the presidency. Of course, there are some different teams. And then go to decide what will be the BIM infrastructure, because the BIM is building information modeling. I don't know, sorry, I suppose that everybody knows that BIM is building information modeling, is more or less like the base where every information is dropped inside. And very important for this to be useful is be able to be operated by several people, and we because of that we need a hybrid system that can absorb the information that comes from different places. Okay, probably not a common data environment. That means that probably not everything can be inside the computer. Some pieces might be related to paper information. And so for finalizing, that means in the end that we are most probably going to a BIM level 1. So it's a very easy, very basic level, and that means 2D and 3D generally in the common data environment. But with a lot 3, lot is the level of definition, and it's not will not be a very high with a lot of definition in order to make it a light model. But with the 3D laser scan points models from the outside and from the inside, from the main spaces. And this last sentence is the keep it as simple as possible, because the easiest to operate, the most frequently it will be used, because if it's very complicated, it will be, in the end, everybody will say, wow, very good, and lock it down and never touch it again. So this is it. Thank you. And okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah.
I'm architect as well. I work in Rome, work on buildings like working not the same department, because we have a project in one of the refurbishment of another building. And I was wondering if the first question is if, in your opinion, the team is the only option we have now. So if you see that as the only, yes, the only option we have to work on this kind of building. And the second question is where is the limit between restoring the heritage of the building and modernizing it? So when you goes, that's very.
Yeah. First question. No, I do not think BIM is the last. I joined this group, the BIM for Heritage, but it's not the only one. In Europe, there are others. And because we are all talking about going digital, the BIM is, let's say, a natural road to take. I am not an expert on BIM, In fact, I know very less of BIM because I know people who know a lot, so I know what I don't know. Um, yes, and this is very important because you understand that there's an entire new world there, and and my approach to BIM is from the conservation management plan. So what is important for me is to use it as a tool to conserve the building. That's what that's what is important to me. It's not to make a beautiful BIM model. Okay, but there are some beautiful. Sorry.
We need this room.
Oh. Okay, we can finish it. Sorry, I don't know the time. I don't know. It's ended. I will talk with you. Okay. Okay. Is it to finish? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye bye. No.
Actually, you would have had 3 more minutes, but
Yes.
we have.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hope it was useful. Please stay in touch. Okay. Good. Yeah, no worries. I have to.